Hello, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is Tammy, Tammy Bilsma. If you see my name and don't know how to pronounce it, that's how it's pronounced. But I reply to just about everything because nobody can pronounce my last name. I'm with Numana Yarns, and I'm in Sherwood Park, Alberta, which is just outside of Edmonton, and probably moving my studio into Edmonton sometime in the next month or two. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I've just got a list here of things that I want to go through. So I am married. I have two now adult daughters. My youngest just turned 18 in January, and my oldest is 21 in January. So I can no longer say I have little kids running around the house anymore. I have to say they're young adults. I just got started dyeing yarn back in 2020. So as we all know, there was a big event that happened in 2020. I don't know what that would be, but I was a travel agent, and yeah, that didn't go very well. As you can imagine, being a travel agent in March of 2020 was, well, it didn't happen anymore. And so I saw the writing on the wall and decided I needed to do something else. In the meantime, I was bored. I was crocheting like crazy because I've crocheted most of my life. Just was like, I just need to do something else other than crochet, because I had hours and hours of just crocheting, and I'm pretty experienced and just wasn't feeling challenged anymore. So I decided to teach myself how to knit, because I had tried to teach myself when my kids were little, and my oldest would keep taking the knitting needles out of my projects, and I didn't know how to get everything back on. And so it just became too frustrating at that point in time. So I kind of put the knitting aside and went, no, I'm not teaching myself that right now. So anyways, I started knitting because I was like, I know there's all this beautiful hand-dyed yarn out there and I want to use it, but crocheting is like yarn pig. So I don't want to use the hand-dyed yarn for that. I want to use knitting and I want to use the hand-dyed yarn. And so as I started knitting more, I'm like, man, there's all this hand-dyed yarn out there, but nothing that, like, I'd have this idea in my head of colors that I would want to work together with, and I couldn't find anything that I wanted to use. So I decided, well, maybe I just need to make my own. So I fell into that rabbit hole really deep, really fast. I think by the end of my first month, I'd probably dyed like 60 skeins of yarn, and my husband comes in and he's like, what are you going to do with all this yarn? And I said, I'm not sure. I guess I'll use it. And people were saying, oh, your yarn is so beautiful, you should sell it. And I'm like, well, man, no, that's maybe an idea. I'm not working as a travel agent anymore. So I opened up my shop on September 1st of 2020 and have been going gangbusters since then. So I get asked a lot about what the meaning of my store name is, and I'll tell you, it's kind of a combination of my kids' nicknames. My oldest daughter is named Brianna, and when her younger sister Nicole was just learning how to talk, she couldn't pronounce Brianna. And so she always called her sister Mana. And that name stuck. Like, my daughter is not Brianna in my phone, it's Mana. And somewhere along the way, I don't even know how it occurred, but my youngest Nicole, her nickname became Nunu. And again, she's in my phone as Nunu. So when I was coming up with the name for the shop, I wanted something very unique and original. And the reason for that is because my husband's had his business name taken over by another company that had much deeper pockets and basically forced us out of that name. And so I wanted something that was quite unique, that wouldn't get stolen, that wouldn't get mistaken for anybody else. And so I came up with Numana, which originally my kids really didn't like because they figured it should be according to their birth order and it should be Mana New. And I'm like, no, it has to be Numana. So that's the name, the reason behind the name of my shop. And I quite like it. So one thing that I always do, if you follow me on social media, is I tend to name my colorways. Some of them have a story behind them. And a lot of people really seem to like hearing about the stories behind some of these colorway names. So later on, I will be going through some of my most popular colorway name / story combinations. But I'm going to get started by talking about the process that I do for dyeing my yarn. So as mentioned before, I do skein all of my yarn. You can see my skeiner over here. I probably do something a little different than most dyers do in that I tend to split my full skeins into 3 sections. So you can see it on the skeiner there. That's actually just 1 skein of yarn. I've just split it into 3. And I do that because I find that it helps with getting the dye nice and evenly, because when I'm dyeing, it's spread out a little bit more than when you take 1 big skein and pile it on top of itself and then put the figure 8 ties in there. So I do that just for color consistency, and it actually makes it quite nice to wind off with your Swift and ball winder. So then of course it gets washed and put into whatever kind of dye pot it's going into. Usually I use the big steamer pans. When I come up with my colorways, I very painstakingly created colorway cards. And as you can see, they go from light to dark. My colors on my computer is not very good, and I apologize for that. My beautiful bright scarf is very dull and dark looking right now just because of my lighting. But I basically just go, okay, like, you know, maybe I want to do something like this blue here and this green and this gray. And these are the colors that I'm going to use. So I just mark down what the color information on there and write out a recipe and go from there. And that comes up with some really nice and consistent colors that I pretty much know how they're going to come out before they ever leave the dye pot. But creating those was a ton of work, as any of the dyers that are in this chat can imagine. But it's so helpful, and I'm so glad I did that in the very beginning. Then, of course, the dyeing happens however it happens. I have a very, very, very tiny dye studio right now. I currently dye in a mudroom / laundry room that has nothing in it but my dye equipment. And it's about 6.5 feet by 14 feet. So I can only dye about 8 skeins of yarn at a time. So I'm a very tiny producer at this point in time, although you can see I've got a lot of yarn stacked in there and in these guys back here, and then in another shelf that you can't see over there. I feel like an airline stewardess. I've been working very hard at getting a lot of yarn so that I have, when I do the in-person shows, I have lots of yarn to choose from. I am hopefully moving locations here soon so that I will have the ability to add wholesale later on. So I dye up 8 skeins at a time. They cool, they get washed, they get dried, twisted with one of those fancy hank twisters that we were talking about before the recording started. And then I do all of my own photos. This desk that you can see behind me is my massive workstation for everything. I end up setting up a whole photo booth on top of this desk, and everything has to move. Like it's kind of crazy. I have a fairly small space to work out of, but I use it as best as I possibly can. So anyways, I'm going to talk a little bit about my yarns. I have, I think, about 26 different bases. I like to have a lot of variety. Nearly all of them are a merino blend or just straight merino. I don't dye any plant-based fibers yet. Maybe in the future once I've moved, but right now I literally just do not have enough space to store that much dye because you need a different kind of dye for the plant-based. So the selection I have on my website, I've got a huge selection of sock yarns. Since I started, it seems like sock yarns are like, I seem to appeal to sock knitters. So I've always had a really extensive selection of sock yarns. And I have been expanding my selection on the other bases based on what seems to be popular on the sock yarns. So generally now, anything that I dye up that's new, it starts out on the sock yarn first and then starts moving over onto the other bases. So because I started my business in the middle of a pandemic, where there's all sorts of supply issues, and you hear about, you know, ships getting stuck in canals and, you know, transportation issues and everything like that, I didn't want to stick with just one kind of sock base, especially knowing that socks are, or sock yarns are the most popular in my shop. So I actually have 3 different bases right now. I have Salisbury Sock. This is on the new highlighters colorway. The colors actually show up not too bad on this one. It is a 3-ply sock yarn, and it's 20% nylon and 80% merino. And then identical in look, this colorway is not showing up very nicely. Maybe stick it by the window. No, it's not coming up nice. It is exactly the same look to it, the same fiber content. The only difference is that the nylon they use is a little bit softer. So these can be used actually interchangeably. I have to be very careful when I work with them that I'm not dyeing them at the same time, the same colorway, because I could get them very confused, especially when wet. They all feel a little bit different when wet. Like you can tell when something is dry, like the difference between a regular sock yarn and say something with cashmere in it. But when it's wet, it's a lot more difficult to tell. So I label these very carefully and don't dye them at the same time, but they can be used interchangeably in a project. So anything that you see on the one base, if you want to work with a colorway on the other base, you can. So that's Salisbury Sock and Barbary Sock. This colorway, although it shows up terribly here, is called Shadowed Rose. The other sock yarn that I have, and I don't have very much in the shop right now at all, but it's Jubilee Sock, and it's a 75-25, so 25% nylon. And it's actually a 4-ply, a little tiny bit thinner than the other sock yarns, but because it's a 4-ply, it's a little bit more durable too. So I'll be bringing more of that in. It's just, I literally don't have any more room for any more cones of yarn in this space. I'm really running out of room here. The next that I have is my, oh, and I'm going to say that the colorway, the base names, are actually the street names in Sherwood Park. And some of them are right, I live in a very tiny subdivision. So some of them are the street names in my little subdivision that I live in right now. And others are street names that were significant to me when I was growing up or with my kids when they were growing up. So I will say the Salisbury is the name of my subdivision. Barbary is the name of a little court just down that way. And then this next one, Fosbury, is actually the street that I live on. So I have Fosbury, which is 100% merino. I have it on a lace weight. It's a nice 2-ply. And this one is called Fall Gardens. Again, the color is it's really dark. It's really pretty. but the colors on my computer suck. I have it on the fingering weight, which is again 2-ply, so it's a little plumper. This one is Coastal. And then I have it on a sport weight. This one actually shows up pretty good. It's a little red, but this is Dancing in September. And then I have the worsted weight. And this one is a little brighter in real life. This is a no dye left behind. So I will, whenever I have any leftover dyes from dyeing experiments or what have you, I tend to throw them all together and do exclusive no dye left behind colorways. So then I have non-superwash. And again, this is 100% merino. So I have that in, it's called Salisbury. It's, this is the fingering weight. And this is a colorway called Zip My Legs Honey, which has a story behind it. So I will be talking about that one later. So I'm going to pop that. I've got a little box here with all my special story way or colorway story ones that I'm going to talk about. Salisbury Sport, so sport weight. This is Beach Day. Color is coming out okay. It's a little lighter in real life. I think that's probably going to be the theme for today. And then I have it in worsted, and this comes out really dark on the colors. And this is in Charmed. So then I have, just make sure I'm grabbing the right ones here. I have the super, super, super soft, fine 17 micron merino, and this feels like baby kittens. It is so, 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 so soft. This is the fingering weight, and it's a really nice plump 2-ply. And like it's so soft. The colorway is called 109. There's a story behind this one. I have that in the sport weight as well, and that's blueberry, shows up really dark on here. And the worsted weight. So this is called Citrus Blast, and again, it's showing up quite dark. Then I also have the single plies. So I have, this is the Hawthorn base. This is Forgotten Flowers. The colors show up terrible. This is actually like pinks and kind of a brown, like light brown, and it's showing up quite dark. A fingering weight, that is Limeberry. And this is worsted. Oh, this one shows up really, really dark. Yeah, it's like, it's almost showing black. This one is a really pretty, like dark teal and kind of a burgundy purple color. And it's called Meet Me in Lacombe. When I do the in-person shows, I will do a colorway naming contest. And it's a juried selection. So when people submit their name ideas for like the yarn that I'm doing for that contest, then my family gets together. I don't partake in the judging, but my family all gets together and I give them the yarn and I say, okay, guys, these are all the name submissions. What do you guys think is the best name for this yarn? And so this particular one was here in Alberta. We went so long without any in-person fiber shows that like I think we maybe had 1 or 2 in the spring, like early spring, like winter/spring, and then we went like months without anything. And so the Prairie Fiber Festival in September in Lacombe was kind of like, oh, we can actually get together and we can do fiber shows again. Like it was such a big deal. So the person that submitted this name was so excited because they could go to a fiber show again. So that we just really like the story behind that name. So, and then I also have that in a super bulky. So that's Hawthorne super bulky. It's a nice big thick single ply for those winter hats, and that's what I usually see them in. Sometimes mitts and cowls, fun things like that. I also carry a number of specialty yarns, I guess I will call them. So I have these guys here. It's going to be very, very hard to see the difference, and it's even hard to see on the website, but these ones both have a thread of stellina in them. One has a thread of silver and the other has a thread of gold. And so I don't know if I bring this closer. Yeah, it's not really, I don't know, you guys can see the sparkle in it, but I find it's really funny because I don't find they sell great on my website, but when I bring them to shows, people just love them because you can actually see the sparkle. It comes out a little odd on on photos. It just kind of looks like little specks, but it's like a really nice sparkly yarn. So you could use this for cowls, or I have had some people use it for socks, but because it's just merino and the stellina, it's not going to be as strong as your regular sock yarns. So anyways, so that's Amesbury fingering silver and Amesbury fingering gold. This is the Grandma Wants to Zipline colorway. That's got a story. And Kaleidoscope, and that has a story, but I've got a different skein of yarn over there. And this one is really hard to see, but it's got like all the colors of the rainbow in it. I also have the Woodbridge, which is both the street name and the name of my kids' elementary school. So Woodbridge Sock 10 and Woodbridge Sock 20. So the only difference between them is that this one has 10% cashmere and 10% nylon along with the merino. And this one has 20% cashmere and 10% nylon. So this one's just got that little bit more cashmere in it, nice and soft. This colorway, again, it's showing up very dark, is Violet Streaks. That's got a story behind it. And this one is Bouquet. I do have some super bulky and super bulky yarns. These are part of the Salisbury base because they do have 20% nylon in them. So they're, they're really good for those big puffy cowls and hats and whatnot that you want to use these things for. So this one is the bulky colorway, or sorry, bulky yarn in Smoke and Mirrors, which is a very popular gray colorway that I have. I have that on a number of different bases. And then this colorway is super, super popular. It's called Hypercolored. I have it on sock yarn as well. And then I have 4 different colors or bases with silk in them. So this is the only one that I have that does not have any merino in it. It's the kid mohair and silk. It's got 30% silk, 70% mohair. So I'm not sure how long I will carry this in my shop, to be honest, because I find I'm allergic to it. So I'm allergic to half the world, but I don't seem to be allergic to wool. I do have 2 merino and silk bases. This one has 30% silk and this one has 50% silk. So they are, again, similar to the sock yarns, visually identical. They just have a slightly different fiber content. So they could be used interchangeably. This one's coming up really, really red, but it's actually a really nice rust color. It's called Radiant Russet. And this guy is another one from my naming contests, and it's called Stormy Sunset. That's coming up quite dark on here. And then the last one that I have here is Glenbrook Sock, and Glenbrook is the name of the street that my parents first bought their first house in Sherwood Park on. This one has a name that has a story behind it. It's called Quiet We're Going North, and this is 70% merino, 20% yak, and 10% silk. So it's quite a nice soft base too. Could definitely be used for socks, especially if you want to have socks that don't have any artificial, man-made products in them. So I'm going to pop that over here. I also carry 2 types of spinning fiber for the spinners out there. I don't know if there's any spinners in this group, but I have Broadmoor fiber, and these you're really not going to be able to see the difference in them, but Broadmoor fiber is a 19.5 micron merino, and it makes really lovely yarns when you spin. That's another thing that I picked up during this whole pandemic was spinning. I have 5 spinning wheels now. It's a little crazy. This has a story behind the colorway name. And then there's this guy here, which is 20% cashmere and 80% merino. And it's also very nice and soft and beautiful to work with. So is there any questions? I should probably, let's see. I will just go through this. Oh, I see somebody's taken part of my naming the colorway contest. That's awesome. I love that. So somebody asked about Charmed, the purple colorway. Is that fingering? That one is on worsted weight, the non-superwash Tisbury worsted weight, but I do have it on sock. I think it's on Salisbury Sock as well, and it might be on another base as well. Let's see. Anything else here? Spinners, yes, there's spinners. Do you offer to roll up the wool? Not quite yet. When I have my shop, I will. And that's just because I have nowhere to set that up right now. I am constantly moving equipment around back here as it is. If I just move to the side, you'll see I've already got my skein twister on there. This whole corner gets taken up with my photo booth, and then this guy isn't something that you skein off of with a ball winder. So I'd have to set up another Swift as well. So I just don't have the space in here to do it. Like you should see it. Like you guys should just see the rest of my office. It's just everything's climbing up the walls because there's just no room for anything in here. The correct number. Yes, I did mention, okay, just a second here. Is Tisbury the only non-superwash? Yes, it is. And then, yes, did you mention one was a non-superwash? That's Tisbury. Correct number of spinning wheels is N+1, where N equals your current number of spinning wheels. That's true. I am looking for more. I should really stay off of Facebook Marketplace. That's a very bad place to visit when you're looking at spinning wheels. Can you show the yarn that you want ideas to name again? So I don't have any on, like any that are in a contest right now. I just do that when I do in-person shows. So the next in-person show that I will be doing will be in April. And if you follow me on social media or if you subscribe to my newsletter, you will be able to see all of the contest information and enter it there. I don't make it so that it's only for the people attending the shows. It's just something I do for in-person shows. Oh, Diane said my Fibre was so nice to spin with. I'm so glad. And I think that's everything so far as questions go. So coming up, so if you have, I don't know if everybody's been on my website. I noticed there's been an uptick in the number of visits on my website over the last couple of days. So I'm assuming most people have had a chance to stop in, but if you haven't, it is www.numanayarns.com. You can go to, I have a little banner at the top that you can click on for upcoming events. And then there's other ways to click through. But I have a few upcoming events. I always do, I call it Yarn and Yak, on the 1st and 15th of each month. And that's basically just a virtual stitch and bitch. The only reason it's not called stitch and bitch, which is how I always refer to these things, is because Instagram doesn't like it when I promote advertisements using that word. So I decided, well, I just need to rename this. So I'm going to call it Yarn and Yak, and just went from there, and that's what it's called now. So I do that virtually on the 1st and 15th, which is also the days that I do my shop updates. So they're at 7 o'clock Mountain Time. You can just go onto my website and register, and you'll get the link for that. And everybody's welcome. You don't have to be working with my yarn. I basically just use this as a social night. So, you know, come bring whatever you want to work on and just visit. I will be doing in-person ones again, probably when I'm moved into the new space. I have a few shows that are coming up. I mentioned one, the Peace Fibre Fest, which is April 24th in Dawson Creek, BC. I'm confirmed for that one. The Edmonton Fibre Frolic, which is May 28th in Edmonton, Alberta. That is still to be confirmed, but I would be very shocked if I wasn't permitted to go, because I've been talked to about sponsorship opportunities and stuff. So the Bigger Fibre Fair, June 11th in Bigger, Saskatchewan, which is roughly, I believe, about an hour or so west of Saskatoon. It's a little tiny town, and they have like a fair going on that same weekend for the whole town. So there's a lot of other activities to go to if you happen to be in the area. That one I am confirmed for. However, my youngest one graduates sometime in June. They have her grad, and they haven't told us yet what the grad date is. So I'm supposed to find that out on March 3rd. So I will possibly have to drop out of that one, but I'm really, really hoping that the grad dates work out this year. Same story with Olds Fibre Week, which is June 17th to 19th in Olds, Alberta. I haven't applied to that one yet because I don't know yet if I can attend. I will be applying after March 3rd once I find out what the whole deal is with the grad dates. So those are the only ones that I have been able to apply to that that are confirmed or in the works, but there are, of course, several others that will be coming up in the fall. Like I'm planning, once they hand out the vendor registrations for Lacombe, I'll be going to that one in September, and so on and so forth. So as I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm going to be moving to a bigger studio, hopefully soon. I am not under contract for any property yet. We're working with it's kind of like when you're leasing a property, a commercial property. It's kind of like when you buy a house where you submit an offer to the landlord, and they, counter offer, and then you counter, and so we're kind of in that process right now. So I'm looking at a place that's about 10 minutes away in Edmonton from my place, and it's a nice big warehouse in the back that I can splash with all sorts of dye colors, and I can produce way more yarn that I can ever dream of. So I'll have so much space to do it, and I'll have space to put all of my equipment out and keep it out all the time, which I am dreaming of, because just to have a photo studio set up all the time is just a big dream, because I hate having to do it all like piecemeal. And then I will also have a nice big space up front where I will have all of my racks set up at all times. So anybody can come in and shop, which I've had a lot of people asking about. Right now, I'm not very shoppable because, as you can see, my yarn is all very stacked and put away, and it's really hard to see everything. So I will also be probably adding at some point classes for crocheting, knitting. I do know people that instruct in knitting because I'm not your girl for that, and dyeing. So those will be coming. Of course, I will be updating social media and my subscriber list with all of that information once I have it. So I'm really hoping soon that I can make an announcement because yeah, I could be moving in as early as next week, which is crazy to be thinking about. So I will mention here that I do have a mailing list that I send out twice a month, usually, unless there's something big going on. The mailing comes out at 6 a.m. on 6 a.m. Mountain Time on the 1st and the 15th. People that are subscribed to the newsletter, they can actually access all of the new items in the shop for the first 6 hours. So they can access everything new from 6 a.m. to noon before it becomes live for the public. So it's just a little treat that I give my newsletter subscribers. So that you guys get first shot at everything that's on there. Let's see. I guess it's time to talk about the different yarn stories. So I've got a box here because I'm running out of room over here. So I'll bring this a little bit closer. So I'm going to talk first about these guys. So I mentioned this one before. It's 109. And the story behind this one, and the reason I'm talking about these three first is, I guess I should start with that, is that I have 3 different colorways that I donate $3 from every skein of yarn to. This is the very first one that I did, and it's called 109. And the reason for that is because my youngest daughter has Tourette syndrome, and one of her very prominent verbal tics was to say 109 when she was younger. And that, I think it's because that was her locker number for a couple of years. And so whenever she had a tic, it would just be 109, 109. And we didn't know that she really had Tourette's, and she didn't really know that she had Tourette's. And so we were just like, is that your favorite number? And she'd be like, yeah, I think it's my favorite number. So anyways, that was kind of our first real experience with her Tourette's. And so she actually picked out all the colors for this one and told me how to put it together. And so $3 from the sale of this one goes to Tourette Canada. So that one's kind of special there. The second one that I dyed, I'm not sure that it appeared on my website second, but it was the second one that I dyed. It's called Marvelous Mavis. And this is showing up quite dark on here, but it's a really nice bright orange with some very light speckling in it. This one was named after a friend's mother. Her mother passed away in October of 2020, just before her, I think it was her 94th birthday. And this lady was just, she was amazing. She was just one of those people that when she walked into a room, you just felt her presence. And she was just always such a warm and caring and loving person, and always just made everybody feel welcome. And, you know, one of those people that you just always like, you always looked forward to seeing. In the last few years of her life, she developed Alzheimer's and unfortunately stopped recognizing a lot of people, and it was just very sad. But so when she passed away, it was both very sad, but also in some ways a relief, as anybody that has experienced Alzheimer's knows. So her and her husband, who had been deceased for a number of years, they had started a scholarship fund. So $3 from the sale of this guy goes towards that scholarship fund. If it wasn't the scholarship fund, it would have been to the Alzheimer's Society. Let's see. And then there's Kaleidoscope, which is showing very, very, very dark. It's much brighter in person. This was my Pride colorway for 2021. My oldest daughter is a member of the LGBTQ community. She actually just got her first girlfriend not that long ago. So yeah, we've met her couple times, and it's so far it's going good. But I asked her, you know, what charity would you want this the donations from this going to? And she picked the Altview Foundation, which is a foundation set in Sherwood Park here for the LGBTQ community. So that's where $3 from this colorway goes to. This is probably one of my top 10 colorways as far as sales. It's on a number of different bases, and it comes out beautifully, but slightly different on every base. All right, so now let's dig into the tickle trunk here. So this one I've already shown, it's Violet Streaks. It comes out really dark here on my screen, but this story is funny. So a few of these stories that I have are based on my aunt, my mom's sister. And she's the youngest of the family, and she's a little quirky. So she's a nurse. She's very, very smart, but sometimes the things that come out of her mouth are very not smart, as you'll see in some upcoming stories. So anyways, my mom was talking about getting her hair done and, you know, wanting to maybe do something a little different. And so my aunt, she's texting back, and she uses the voice to text a lot, I think. But anyways, she says to my mom, "Oh, you should just, you should put vomited steaks in your hair." And like, I'm sitting there with my mom, and my mom's like, "What does she mean, vomited steaks? Why would I put vomited steaks in my hair?" Because I mean, ew. And so anyways, what it turned out was my aunt was trying to say violet streaks, which of course is a much different visual than vomited steaks. So I didn't want to name a yarn vomited steaks for obvious reasons, but violet streaks I think is a nice name, colorway name. This guy here, and again, it's showing very dark. This is the baking soda incident. It's one of my fibers, no dye left behind. So it's one of a kind. I think this is the only one left. When my youngest daughter was little, I was a surrogate twice. And after I did my first surrogacy journey, I want to say I was maybe 3 days postpartum. So for any of you that have had children, you know what that's like. Your hormones are all over the place. You're tired, you're sore, your milk's coming in, you're just kind of, So the night before this particular incident happened, we had some really, really, really heavy rains, and our sump pump in the basement decided it wasn't going to work anymore. So my husband was working way on the other side of Edmonton at the time, and I'm by myself, sore, tired, milk coming in, dealing with this flood in the basement with this tiny little, like, spot cleaner steamer thing, trying to just suck up as much water as I can and haul it up the stairs and dump it. So anyways, I was already tired and kind of done at this point already. So the next day I go in to have my shower, and I open up my bedroom door after I've had my shower and everything, and I'm greeted on the other side by Casper the ghost. Then I want to say she was probably about 3.5-year-old. She was covered head to toe in baking soda. She had apparently, while I was in the shower, very quietly, because she always did these things very quietly, she walked from the laundry room, took a big full box of baking soda, because I used it to wash certain things, carried it up the stairs to her sister's room, and proceeded to dump it over everything. You've seen those videos where people have videotaped their kid, in the kitchen, and they've dumped flour everywhere. Well, that was the kind of scene that I was met with. And so I start trying to clean this up. My vacuum cleaner decides, no, I can't handle this, and it dies. So I'm calling my mom saying, "Mom, I need help. I can't handle this." And, my kid at the same time, she's covered in baking soda and needs a bath. So yeah, that was a fun thing. So the reason that this colorway is it has that name is because the pajamas that she was wearing at the time had these colors in it. So that's the reason for that colorway having that name. So then we have Quiet, We're Going North. And this is on a number of different bases. It's also a fairly popular one. It doesn't show up very nicely on here, as just about everything isn't showing up nicely. It's a nice blue and brown mix. And this was a saying that my grandfather would have. And I don't know how it worked, but it was like magic. So my mom is 10 years older than her next youngest sibling. And then the next one is the crazy aunt is 3 years younger than that. So, so they're only about 3 years apart, the next two youngest, right? And so they would go in the car somewhere and my mom would be older and quiet and, you know, doing her own thing. And my two younger aunts would be chattering away in the background, which would drive my grandfather nuts. So in order to make them quiet, he would say, "Hey, girls, quiet, we're going north." And for whatever reason, that would make them shut up. And they'd be like looking out the windows like, "Oh, what's north?" Like crazy, stupid things. But apparently it works. So if you have little toddlers in the car, maybe it's a trick to try. But the reason this one is called that name is because when I dyed it at first, I'm like, this reminds me of something that my grandma used to wear. And so I could just picture my grandma wearing this dress in the car and my grandfather saying this, and it just seemed to fit. And we have Grandma Wants to Zipline, this guy here. And this one is just because my mom had hip surgery back in March of 2020, right before everything went crazy. And we had done a cruise maybe about 3 months before that. And every shore excursion, if it mentioned zip lining, my mom's like, "Oh, I really want a zip line. I really want a zip line." I'd be like, "Mom, you have a very badly damaged hip. You are not zip lining." So now that she's had her hip replaced, she's really wanting to zip line. And then of course, you know, we have this pandemic, we're not traveling. So Grandma still has not zip lined, but these colors just reminded me of like tropical heat. So that was fun. And I'm getting close on time here, but I haven't, let's see if there's any, I'm going to pull out the most popular one here. So this one is probably my most popular colorway story. It's called A Day Without Pants. I get asked about this one a lot. I've had people buy this one just because of the story. So you have to picture a very, very, very short 80-plus-year-old. Okay, like I'm talking like probably 4'9". She barely, like she comes up to like, you know, my rib cage. She's so tiny. This is my husband's grandmother. And one day, this very tiny little petite lady decides she needs to do some errands. So she goes off and she goes to the grocery store and, you know, maybe drops off something at the dry cleaners or whatever. She does a couple of stops on the way. She runs into some people she knows in the grocery store. You know, they chat, whatever. It's all a normal day. She comes back from doing all of her errands, and she realizes that she's done this without pants. She's done all of these errands. She's talked to all of these people without pants. She forgot to put on pants that day. So anyways, I'm figuring because she's so tiny, she probably just put on a regular t-shirt. And because of her height, it probably looked like some sort of mini dress. That's the best thing that I can come up with for why nobody commented or said anything, because I can just imagine this lady walking around with no pants. if her shirt was at all proportional to her, like somebody would have said something, right? So anyways, so that's the story behind the Day Without Pants colorway, and a lot of people find that quite funny because yeah, I just can't imagine why nobody would have said anything to her about that. I've got another funny one here. This is called Wrestling Bunnies. And the reason for that is because my cousin, when he was very, very tiny, he was having some pajamas made for him by my grandma. And they went to the fabric store, they looked at all this fabric. He found this flannel that he really liked. And my aunt and my grandma, they looked at it and they go, "Are you sure you want that one?" He's like, "Yeah, I really want this one." "Well, how about this one?" "No, no, I want this one." "How about that one?" "No, I want that one." And the reason they were really hesitant to buy it is because, and I'm going to say this um, a little delicately, just in case there's little ears around, but the bunnies were not just bunnies. They were pink and blue bunnies that were exercising, doing what bunnies do. And he insisted he wanted this fabric because he wanted the wrestling bunnies. So they bought the fabric and they made the pajamas, and they were kept for all eternity so that we could bother him about it for the rest of his life. So he's well into his 30s now, and the story still comes up about the wrestling bunnies and how we should, get some boxers or whatever made for him out of his wrestling bunny fabric. And yeah, apparently the fabric sold like hotcakes from the fabric store. That's what the ladies were telling my aunt and grandma. So that's wrestling bunnies. And I'm going to see if there's any other questions. Okay, would I ever do shows more east? Hopefully one day. So part of the whole reason that I'm moving to another location is because when I do shows, taking all the yarns from these bins back here, packing them all up, getting them into my car, getting them to the show, setting them all up, then doing all of the reverse after the end of the show is very, very time consuming. I find it takes about 6 days. So with the new space, I'm planning to get a trailer and just have my racks set up and just roll them into the trailer, which will enable me to go further because I won't have, the additional days of travel also impeding me in for how long it takes to get everything set up. So excellent organized presentation. Love meeting you. Thank you. Love meeting you too. And if anybody wants to like pop in and say hi, go for it. And yeah, just other comments. So if anybody has any questions, I think, am I just about out of time or am I over time?
You have 8 more minutes.
I have 8 more minutes. Okay, I have a couple more colorways that I can talk about then. All right, so, okay, when I have to talk about when is March because I talked about my aunt. So this is when in March. Again, shows up really dark. Best place to look is on the website. So this is again another story about my crazy aunt. So again, now remember, I said she is very smart. She is a registered nurse. She's retired now, but she's worked in nursing for decades. Well, apparently she doesn't know when March is. I don't know. So they were talking, this is a number of years ago, about when Easter was, what weekend Easter was going to be this year. And for whatever reason, it was in March that coming spring. And so my aunt is like, "Oh, okay, it's in March. But when is March?" And she just left it like that. I'm like, "What do you mean when is March? Like, do you not know the calendar? Like, you're so smart. How do you not know when March is?" And I think what she meant is like, maybe, I don't even know what she meant, honestly. I can't even come up with a reason why she would not know when March is. But so yes, we bug her about that all the time. Whenever she says something crazy, we'll just look at her and go, "So Kelly, when is March?" And she'll just, like, "Oh, stop." Let's see. This one's a funny one. So it's going to be dark. It's called Oxidate, and it's spelled OXID and then the number 8. And this one, so it's kind of a rusty color, as you probably can't see. But this one is just named after a car that we saw. So we were driving and pulled up behind this car, this really, really old, I shouldn't say car, it was a truck, probably from the 50s, maybe even the 40s truck. And it was obviously in some sort of stage of repair, but they had a personalized plate on it and it said Oxidate. And we just started laughing because this truck, it was like covered in rust and covered in like old peeling paint, and it was just like the perfect name for this rusty old truck. And we're like, kind of hope that they never fix it because it goes so well with this truck. So I just had to do a colorway after that. Let's see. This one's popular, especially around Christmas time for very obvious reasons. But it's actually not a Christmas colorway, at least not by name. It is called When Not in Rome. And that's because my husband and I had this beautiful trip planned for November of 2020, where we were going to go fly into Italy and tour around Italy and then get onto a cruise ship and go down to Israel and to Turkey and Greece and a whole bunch of other places, 12-night cruise, and we still haven't taken it. So when I dyed this one up, we were supposed to be in Rome. And because these are also the colors of the Italian flag, I just figured it needed more of an Italian name than a Christmas name. This one's kind of funny. It's called Umba Has It, which is a really weird name. It's also very dark showing on the screen. So this is again about my youngest daughter. So do you remember that song, Rumor Has It by Adele? Just think of the lyrics for that. Well, we were in the grocery store when this song was really, really popular on the radio. And my daughter, again, she's got Tourette's. She gets overstimulated by certain things, and she's just like, I don't like this song. I don't like this song. I don't like this Umba Has It song. We're like, what are you talking about, Umba Has It song? The Umba Has It song. And then she starts singing it. We're like, oh, it's the Rumor Has It song. So now we refer to that song as the Umba Has It song, and it gets its own colorway. And then this might be the last one. That's hard to say. This one is Zip My Legs, Honey, which I showed you before. This one was named after an experience my daughter had. So she was a healthcare aide. And when she was doing her clinicals, of course, during this whole pandemic thing, it's just crazy. So the first day that she walked into clinicals, she has this lady that comes up to her and she says, honey, come here, honey. And she's like, oh, okay, like, what do you need? She says, zip my legs, honey. And my daughter's like, well, okay then. And so, I mean, the lady's just wearing regular pants, but she just goes and pretends to zip her legs, and the lady's all happy. She's like, oh, thank you, honey. And then walks away. So we just thought that was kind of a funny little phrase. So it just got its own colorway. And let's see, let's talk about my husband, because he's probably here and probably over listening and probably will laugh. This one here is called Current Mood Spicy, and it's not as dark as it appears. Again, it's kind of a rusty red orange color. But my husband seems to think he's the funniest thing alive sometimes, and we'll just start making jokes and not stop. And so when he gets into that mood, we tell him he's currently spicy. And so that's, I mean, we were saying it last night. It's not something that just happened once and that's it. We talk about this all the time. Whenever he's in a funny mood, he gets spicy. So my daughters now know that if I say, oh, Dad's feeling spicy tonight, they know exactly what kind of mood he's in and know exactly what to expect, and probably will get some weird texts from him. So Current Mood Spicy, it's a tonal and it goes really nicely with a lot of my kind of orangey red colorways. And I think I got one more minute. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So let's see. I'll talk about my dad with a pink colorway. So this is Cotton Candy Craving, which is kind of a just pink on pink with pink speckles. And the reason for this is because back in 2019, my dad needed to move into long-term care. So he moved in July, and then he moved to a facility in Sherwood Park a month later, which was great for us because he was originally in Edmonton. So he moved to this location in Sherwood Park, and the next month they were having their 50th anniversary for the facility. And so they had this whole carnival thing going on. And of course, this is when everybody could just go into long-term care centers and, you know, party it up. It was great. So they had a cotton candy machine there as part of their festivities. And I have never in my, well, at that time I would have been 44 years of life, have ever seen my dad eat cotton candy. Like, never. Well, we got him some cotton candy from the machine and he just gobbled it up like you wouldn't believe. And he was so happy. And then he'd be like, oh, could you get me some more of that cotton candy? And so then every time that we went to the store, we'd have to bring him cotton candy on the way back. It was just a really weird thing because like I've never seen him ask for that. So anyways, this is named after that because it kind of reminds me of the cotton candy floss. And you know, when you eat it, it gets like the little hard crystals. I thought that kind of was like the speckles in there. So anyways, I'll just see about any more questions here. Hello to everybody that's saying hello. And how long is it until March? Yeah, I don't know. Don't ask my aunt. She'll probably tell you it's 4 months away. So this colorway, it shows up so terribly. Maybe if I take it off and show it in the light. Oh, that shows up a little better. So this is the Rayna Shawl, and I knit it. It took me forever. It is in the colorway Go Bold. You can see the color is much better on here. And it's just a one skein shawl. I had a little bit left over after this. The only modification I made was to make the border a little bit thicker. It only had like, I think 3 rows of garter stitch on the bottom. So there's that. And then I showed you the new highlighters colorway. I have a shawl in progress, which will probably take me another 6 months to finish because I'm that slow with knitting. But I just wanted to show what a pooling colorway can do other than just what you expect with socks. So that's new highlighters, which is this guy that I showed at the very beginning. And it's knit with Power Outage, which is just tonal black. It's kind of like a soft black, which it looks like black on here, but it's a softer black, so it's not quite so hard on the eyes. But I figured, you know, like you see, a lot of people don't like pooling yarn because of how it looks in socks. They don't like the spiraling effect of it, but there's so many other things you can do with it. So I thought I'd knit that up and show what a pooling yarn can do. All right, so I think we're over time now. Yeah, okay. So